When Rachel asked me to say a few words at today's lunch, I thought, great, public speaking is something I can tick off my list of things to do before I'm 40. When I turned 39 in April this year, I decided to make my 40th year one of opportunities and new experiences. The idea of speaking in front of a group of people terrifies me, but I'm going to be brave and make it a character-building experience. I became Lewis Manning's youngest patient in May this year when my oncology nurse referred me as a day hospice patient. I'd been struggling with severe depression and she felt Lewis Manning would be able to help me. Having spent 5 months absorbed in new art and craft projects, spending time with people who in the same situation as me, and having the opportunity to speak to a specialist nurse on a one-to-one basis each week has left me feeling more positive about my future and with a purpose to my days. I was diagnosed with secondary breast cancer in October 2008 when I was 34 years old. Secondary means it has spread to other parts of my body. The diagnosis came completely out of the blue and has devastated my family. My sister got married on the Saturday, and although I didn't have much to drink, I felt I had an awful hangover the next day that continued into the Monday, which I thought was most unfair. The Tuesday morning I woke up feeling not quite right. My breathing was laboured and I had a discomfort under my rib cage. Miraculously, I managed to get an appointment for my GP at 9 o'clock, and thankfully he realised there was something wrong and sent me to the hospital with suspected gallstones. As soon as the doctor at the hospital examined me, he told me it wasn't gallstones, but that my liver was enlarged. And then he started an interrogation. How much did I have to drink? Are you sure that's all you drank? I told him about the wedding and that I'd had only 3 glasses of wine over the whole day. Are you sure? Are you sure? Then he asked about painkillers, and I remembered being close to tears on the morning of the wedding because my hip was hurting so much. I'd been using paracetamol over the last month, having hurt my hip carrying my youngest daughter around at Legoland. I don't think he was satisfied with my answers and said to me that he would keep me in overnight for observation, but he wasn't too concerned because I didn't seem too unwell. The next day I had an ultrasound scan on my liver, and that's when everything changed. 3 doctors came over to my bed. One sat down and held my hand whilst the other explained that they'd seen something on my liver and they needed to rule out cancer. I panicked at the word cancer but felt relieved that they just needed to rule it out. I calmly explained that it couldn't be cancer because my uncle had died of lung cancer only 6 weeks previously, so it wouldn't be happening to my family again. I was moved to a private room, offered a cup of tea and told that my husband could come in whenever he wanted. We didn't need to wait for visiting hours. That kindness scared me more than anything the doctors had said. Later that day, I had a CT scan which confirmed that what they'd seen on my liver was in fact cancer. They said they could also see some in my bones, and when I asked if my left hip was one of them, they had confirmed that it was. They told me they needed to find the primary tumour and that they'd seen a small lump in the back of my left breast. I had a biopsy and a mammogram later that day, and that confirmed their suspicions. Because the cancer had already spread, it was considered terminal, but if I responded to chemotherapy, I could be well for many months. And that was 5 years ago. I just couldn't believe it. How could something like this be happening to me? I was young, fit and healthy, and apart from a painful hip and an inability to hold my booze, I'd had no symptoms at all. The tiredness I felt I'd put down to being a mum of 2 young daughters. You show me a parent of a 2-year-old and a nearly 4-year-old who isn't exhausted. A week later I started chemo and my cancer journey began. The past 5 years have been a real roller coaster. I've been on 3 different types of chemo. I lost my hair, I lost lots of weight being sick and then put it all and more back on again. Taking steroids. I have a fractured shoulder and cracked ribs. My husband was bullied at work because he took time off to support me. My daughters have had to grow up knowing things about life that I feel I would have preferred they didn't know until they were older. But for all that, there have also been some wonderful experiences and opportunities. Thanks to a couple of insurance policies that had critical illness cover, we've been able to go on some fantastic family holidays that we otherwise would never have afforded. I was retired from work on ill health grounds, and so I've been able to be a stay-at-home mum and to be around for my girls. I've met some wonderful people who have supported and encouraged me through the tough times, and I've been made aware of how lucky I am to have such a supportive family and group of friends. Sometimes it's hard to remember life before cancer. I had a full life and felt content with what I'd achieved. My 2-1 degree in social sciences, my career with Bournemouth Social Services, preparing children for their move to an adoptive placement. The Bournemouth model of life story work was becoming considered best practice for other authorities because of the research and work that I'd done. And of course my family. I had never really wanted children, but my husband persuaded me, and the moment I held my first daughter in my arms I felt truly complete. Then I was diagnosed with cancer, and since then my life has been defined by that diagnosis. In some ways I'm sorry about this because I know deep down that there is more to me than cancer. As part of the Women Inspiring Women project, I've been privileged to interview some of the Lewis Manning Day Hospice patients, and I've been really impressed with the way these ladies haven't let their illness define them. And although I know there is more to me than just cancer, I felt I've used my illness to enhance my life. Shortly after my first course of chemo, myself and a group of family members took part in the cancer research race for life. As my mum pushed me over the finish line in my wheelchair, I was approached by a lady called Helen. She was a cancer research press officer and asked me if I'd be prepared to share my story to encourage other people to pay in their sponsor money. I agreed, and as we spoke the next day, she asked several questions, including how I cope with my diagnosis. I told her that I love to write and that I use a journal to pour out my feelings and fears. A few days later I was telephoned by an Echo journalist who said she'd spoken to Helen and asked if I'd be prepared to have my journal published in the Echo, and that they would link it to a Just Giving page so that if people felt moved by my story they could make donations to cancer research. My journal was edited to protect the innocent and was printed retrospectively at first, but then became a real-time blog. After a month I'd raised £1,000. I've raised close to £5,000 for breast cancer care, an organisation that offers support for anyone affected by breast cancer. Having attended a couple of their workshops and been put in touch with other women in my situation, I felt honoured to be asked to become a fundraising ambassador for Bournemouth. I've held a series of events including coffee mornings and quiz nights, mufti days and street collections. Having kept up my blog for nearly 3 years, I decided that it had come to a natural end and I should concentrate my efforts on writing a book about my experiences. When I was first diagnosed, I searched the internet for books by other women in my situation and couldn't find any. There were plenty by women who had beaten primary breast cancer or by celebrities that had run marathons and climbed mountains, but none by normal women living with the daily highs and lows of the incurable illness. So I decided to write one. I've tried to be as honest as I can be about the way that chemo affects your body image, the way cancer affects your relationships, and the way people say the most unbelievable things without considering how you may feel. For example, the timeshare salesman who told me, "With all due respect, madam, your family will still take holidays when you're gone," in a desperate attempt to get a sale. Or the women's magazine photographer who suggested I shave my head to make the photographs more authentic when I considered selling my story. He made up my mind for me not to go ahead with the story. I feel that having cancer has helped put my life into perspective. I'm no longer terrified of heights, and I even managed to catch a big black spider the other day, albeit with a vacuum cleaner. I no longer feel afraid to speak up of injustices, and I feel blessed to have been given the opportunity to leave a legacy for my children in the way of my journals, memory boxes and my book. Don't get me wrong, I'm terrified of leaving my babies, and I try not to think of the pain I may experience at the end. I'll deal with that when I have to. But in the meantime, I'm going to make the most of the time I do have, and make this my 40th year. I hope it continues to be an opportunity of new experiences. Next stop, karaoke bar. And my message to other women would be never to have any regrets. It's better to make a mistake and learn from it than to wish you'd done spend the rest of your life wishing you'd done something that you hadn't.